They laughed when she tried to speak. They told her she was nothing more than a glorified secretary who should stick to fetching lattes while the adults talked business. Alistair Montgomery, the arrogant senior partner, actually snapped his fingers in her face in front of the entire board, mocking her cheap suit and her lack of pedigree. He thought he was untouchable in that boardroom. He thought he held all the cards. But he made one fatal calculation error. He didn't check who actually signed the lease on the skyscraper they were sitting in. He humiliated Verity Caldwell during the hearing, not knowing her father didn't just own the company. He owned the very floor under their feet, and eviction time was just around the corner. The elevator ride to the 42nd floor of the Obsidian Tower always made Verity's ears pop. But today, the pressure building in her head had nothing to do with altitude. It was the stack of files in her arms, heavy, disorganized, and thrown at her by Beatrice Sharp 5 minutes before the most important hearing of the quarter. "Don't drop them, Verity," Beatrice had sneered, checking her reflection in the polished brass of the elevator doors. "And for heaven's sake, try to stand in the back today. We have the investors from Zurich coming in. We need to project success, not whatever it is you're wearing." Verity looked down at her grey skirt suit. It was off the rack, sensible, and completely unbranded. In the world of Kensington Partners, a law firm that charged more per hour than most people made in a month, wearing unbranded clothing was a sin worse than incompetence. "I'll stay out of the way, Beatrice," Verity said, her voice steady. She was used to this. For 6 months, she had been the invisible girl, the intern who stayed late, fixed the formatting errors in the senior partner's briefs, and fetched the obscure herbal teas that Alistair Montgomery demanded. They knew her as Verity. No last name worth remembering. To them, she was a charity hire, someone who had slipped through the cracks of HR because she had a decent law degree from a state university, not an Ivy League. What they didn't know, what Verity had painstakingly hidden under a layer of humility and cheap polyester, was that her last name was Caldwell, as in Harrison Caldwell, the real estate tycoon whose portfolio included half the skyline of Chicago, a chunk of Manhattan, and ironically, the Obsidian Tower itself. Verity had begged her father to let her make it on her own. "I want to know I'm good enough, Dad," she had told him over a dinner of take-out Chinese food in his penthouse. "If I use your name, they'll only see the money. I want to see if I can be a lawyer without the Caldwell safety net." Harrison had laughed, his eyes crinkling. "All right, V, but if they treat you like trash, the deal is off. I didn't raise a doormat." She tightened her grip on the files as the elevator dinged. "I'm not a doormat," she told herself. "I'm observing. I'm learning." But today, patience was wearing thin. The hearing was technically an arbitration meeting, but the atmosphere was as hostile as a criminal trial. Kensington Partners represented a massive pharmaceutical conglomerate, Ethelgard Bio, which was trying to bulldoze a historic community center to build a new research lab. The community center was represented by a pro bono lawyer, a tired-looking man named Mr. Henderson, who looked like he hadn't slept in a week. Verity walked into the conference room. It was a cavern of glass and mahogany, offering a panoramic view of the city. At the head of the table sat Alistair Montgomery. Alistair was a man who looked like he had been manufactured in a factory for villains. He had silver hair, perfectly coiffed, a suit that cost more than Verity's car, and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Beside him was Beatrice Sharp, his second-in-command, a woman who treated cruelty like a competitive sport. "Coffee," Alistair said, without looking up as Verity entered. He didn't ask. He just stated the noun. "I have the files on the zoning laws you asked for, Mr. Montgomery," Verity said, placing the stack on the table. "I actually flagged a potential issue with the—" "I said coffee," Alistair interrupted, finally raising his eyes. They were cold, dead shark's eyes. "Did I ask for your opinion on zoning laws? You're a junior associate, Verity. Barely. Your job is to ensure my caffeine levels are adequate so I can eviscerate this pathetic little community centre. Now go." Beatrice snickered, covering her mouth with a manicured hand. "Go on, honey. The machine is down the hall. Try not to get lost." Verity felt the heat rise in her cheeks. She could buy this building. She could buy Alistair's house and turn it into a dog park. But she swallowed the rage. "Cream or sugar?" "Black. Like my heart," Alistair joked to the Zurich investors, who chuckled nervously. As Verity turned to leave, she caught the eye of the pro bono lawyer, Mr. Henderson. He looked at her with sympathy. That look hurt more than the mockery. He saw her as a victim. She walked to the break room, her hands shaking. She poured the coffee, her mind racing. She had read the zoning files. She had stayed up until 3 a.m., reading the fine print of the original land deed for the community centre. There was a clause there, a grandfather preservation clause from 1922 that Kensington Partners had completely overlooked. If Eithilgard Bio tried to bulldoze that centre, they would be in violation of a historical preservation trust, triggering a lawsuit that would cost them millions. She had tried to tell Alistair. She had tried to save the firm from walking into a trap. But he wanted coffee. Fine, Verity thought, staring at the black liquid swirling in the cup. If he wants to play the tyrant, let him. But I'm not going to let him destroy that community centre just because he's too arrogant to read the footnotes. She took a deep breath, fixed her subservient intern expression back onto her face, and walked back into the lion's den. She wasn't just bringing coffee. She was bringing a front-row seat to a disaster, and for the first time in 6 months, she was starting to wonder if it was time to call her father. The conference room smelled of expensive cologne and fear. On one side of the massive mahogany table sat the Kensington team, Alistair, Beatrice, and 2 other senior partners, looking like a phalanx of sharks. On the other side sat Mr. Henderson and 2 elderly women representing the community centre board. They looked small, fragile, and out of place against the backdrop of the city skyline. Verity placed the coffee silently next to Alistair's elbow. He didn't acknowledge her. She took her seat in the far corner, against the wall, taking out her notepad. This was the children's table, as Beatrice called it. "Let's make this quick," Alistair began, opening his leather-bound folder. "My client, Eithilgard Bio, has made a generous offer. We are offering $50,000 for the relocation of your hobbies. This offer expires at noon today." "It's not a hobby," one of the elderly women said, her voice trembling but defiant. "That centre has been there for 80 years. It feeds the homeless. It runs after-school programs. You can't just—" "We can and we will," Beatrice cut in, flipping her hair. "The city has already approved the preliminary rezoning. You are squatting on prime commercial real estate. We are doing you a favour by offering you anything at all." Mr. Henderson cleared his throat. "With all due respect, Ms. Sharp, the rezoning isn't finalised. There is the matter of the public hearing next month." Alistair laughed. It was a dry, barking sound. "Henderson, please, we both know how this works. We have the mayor on speed dial. The hearing is a formality. By next month, the bulldozers will already be idling. Take the money. Go buy some knitting needles. Save yourself the embarrassment of a legal battle you cannot afford." Verity watched Alistair's arrogance radiating off him like heat waves. He was bullying them. It was disgusting. But more than that, it was legally reckless. She glanced down at her notes. The clause she had found, Section 4, Paragraph B of the 1922 deed, explicitly stated that the land could never be used for commercial biochemical endeavours. It was a restriction placed by the original donor of the land, a paranoid eccentric who hated modern medicine. It was obscure, yes, but legally binding. If Alistair pushed this through and Ethelgard Bio broke ground, the heirs of the original donor could sue for the full value of the land plus damages. It would be a catastrophe for Kensington Partners. Verity knew she shouldn't speak. She knew her place. But she also knew that the job of a lawyer was to protect the client, even if the senior partner was a moron. "Mr. Montgomery," Verity spoke up. Her voice was soft, but in the acoustically perfect room it carried. Silence fell. Every head turned toward the corner where the coffee girl sat. Alistair turned slowly in his chair, his expression one of utter disbelief. "Excuse me?" I apologize for interrupting," Verity said, standing up. Her legs felt like jelly, but she locked her knees. "But before you finalize the offer, I think you should look at page 42 of the deed abstract. I flagged it in the file." Beatrice rolled her eyes so hard it looked painful. "Oh my God. Verity, sit down." "No, really," Verity persisted, grabbing the file she had placed on the table earlier. "There's a restrictive covenant from 1922. It prohibits biochemical research on the premises. If we proceed with the acquisition for Ethelgard, we're setting the client up for a reversionary interest lawsuit. The land will automatically revert to the donor's estate." She held the file out to Alistair. For a second, the room was silent. Mr. Henderson looked at Verity with wide eyes, realizing she had just handed him a lifeline. The Zurich investors looked concerned. Alistair's face turned a shade of red that bordered on purple. He didn't take the file. Instead, he stood up, towering over the table. "You are an intern," Alistair spat, his voice low and dangerous. "You are here to observe. You are here to learn. You are not here to hallucinate legal theories from the 1920s to sabotage my negotiation. It's not a theory, sir. It's written in black and white. Enough!" Alistair slammed his hand on the table, making the coffee cups rattle. "Do you have any idea who you are talking to? I have practiced law for 30 years. Do you think I missed a clause? Do you think you, with your state school degree and your department store shoes, found something that I missed? I'm just trying to help. You are humiliating this firm," Beatrice joined in, sensing blood in the water. "You are undermining us in front of the opposition. It's unprofessional and frankly, it's pathetic." Alistair pointed a shaking finger at the door. "Get out." Verity froze. "Sir?" "Get out of my conference room," Alistair roared. "Pack your things. You're done. I don't want to see your face in this building again. You're fired, and I'll make sure you never work in this city again." The brutality of it hung in the air. The elderly women gasped. Even the Zurich investors looked uncomfortable. Verity stood there, the file still in her hand. She felt the tears pricking her eyes, not of sadness, but of pure, unadulterated fury. She had tried to save him. She had tried to do the right thing. And he had treated her like garbage. She looked at Alistair, really looked at him. She saw the sweat on his upper lip, the fear behind the bluster. He wasn't a great lawyer. He was just a bully in an expensive suit. And then a calm settled over her. It was the calm of a person who realizes they are holding a nuclear launch code. She slowly placed the file on the table. She didn't pack her things. She didn't run out crying. "You're firing me?" Verity asked, her voice eerily calm. "I'm evicting you from the premises," Alistair sneered. "Security will escort you out." "You know," Verity said, smoothing her skirt. "That's a very interesting choice of words, Alistair. Eviction?" She reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. It was an old model, or at least the case made it look that way. "Who are you calling?" Beatrice scoffed. Your mum to come pick you up? No, Verity said, unlocking the screen. I'm calling the landlord. Alistair laughed, looking at the investors. She's lost her mind. The stress was too much for her. The landlord of your apartment? Beatrice asked, confused. Verity looked Beatrice dead in the eye. No. The landlord of this building, the Obsidian Tower, the man who signs the lease for Kensington Partners. Alistair stopped laughing. The Obsidian Tower is owned by a holding company, Caldwell Holdings. Correct, Verity said. She pressed a contact named Dad. It rang once. Hello? The deep, booming voice of Harrison Caldwell echoed through the quiet room on speakerphone. Hi, Dad, Verity said, her voice changing from the meek intern to the daughter of a billionaire. I'm on the 42nd floor, in the main conference room. V? Harrison's voice shifted instantly from business to concern. Is everything okay? You sound different. I'm fine, Dad. But I think you need to come down here. There's a tenant dispute. Tenant dispute? Harrison sounded confused. I'm actually in the penthouse right now. Just finished a meeting with the architects. Who is bothering you? Verity looked at Alistair. His face had gone from red to a ghostly, chalky white. He recognized the voice. Everyone in the business world knew the voice of Harrison Caldwell. It's Alistair Montgomery, Verity said, maintaining eye contact with her former boss. He just fired me. But before I leave, I think we need to discuss the renewal of the lease for Kensington Partners, specifically the clause about professional conduct within the building. I'll be there in 3 minutes, Harrison said, his voice dropping an octave, becoming dark and terrifying. Don't let him leave. The line went dead. Verity put the phone down on the mahogany table. The silence in the room was now absolute. It was heavy, suffocating, and for Alistair Montgomery, it was the sound of his career disintegrating. You, Alistair whispered, his voice cracking. You're a Caldwell? Verity didn't answer. She just sat back down in the expensive leather chair at the head of the table right next to him and poured herself a cup of coffee. I believe, Verity said, taking a sip, that I will wait for my father to arrive. Oh, and Alistair, it's plenty sweet enough. I don't need sugar. The 3 minutes it took for Harrison Caldwell to travel from the penthouse to the 42nd floor were not measured in seconds, but in the rapid disintegration of Alistair Montgomery's ego. The conference room, previously a theatre of Alistair's dominance, had transformed into a cage. The silence was absolute, broken only by the rhythmic tapping of Verity's fingernail against her ceramic coffee cup. Tap, tap, tap. It was a sound that seemed to echo like a countdown. Alistair had slumped back into his chair, his face glistening with a sheen of cold sweat. He loosened his silk tie, which suddenly seemed to be strangling him. He looked at Beatrice, but his loyal attack dog had lost her bite. She was frantically scrolling through her tablet, likely looking up the net worth of Caldwell Holdings and realizing she had just insulted the heiress to a fortune that could buy and sell the entire law firm 10 times over. Verity, Alistair croaked, his voice unrecognizable. He tried to smile, but it looked like a grimace of pain. Let's not blow this out of proportion. Emotions were running high. It's a stressful case. Verity didn't look at him. She looked out the window at the sprawling city her father had helped build. I wasn't emotional, Alistair. I was citing a property deed. You were the one shouting. I was emphatic, Alistair corrected weakly. Look, about the firing. Obviously that was heat of the moment. We value you here. You're a glorified secretary, Verity finished for him, turning her gaze back to him. Her eyes were hard. An intern who should stick to fetching lattes? Or a charity hire? as I heard you call me in the break room last week?" Alistair flinched as if slapped. The Zurich investors were exchanging whispers in German. Verity caught the word catastrophe, repeated twice. "I didn't know," Alistair pleaded, his hands open on the table. "Verity, you have to understand. You came in here wearing... well, you were so quiet. If I had known you were a Caldwell, I would have..." "You would have what?" Verity interrupted, her voice rising just enough to cut through the room. "You would have treated me with basic human decency? That's the problem, Alistair. You shouldn't need to know my last name to treat me like a professional. The fact that you only respect money is exactly why you're in this mess." Before Alistair could respond, the heavy double doors of the conference room didn't just open. They were thrown wide. Harrison Caldwell filled the doorway. He wasn't wearing a suit. He was wearing dark jeans, a black cashmere turtleneck, and a pair of boots that looked like they had seen a construction site or two. But the power rolling off him was palpable. He didn't need a tie to look important. He owned the building. Behind him stood two large men in suits, his personal security detail, but Harrison waved them back. He walked into the room with the stride of a predator entering its own territory. His eyes, a piercing shade of blue identical to Verity's, swept the room, landing instantly on Alistair. "Dad," Verity said, standing up. Harrison's expression softened instantly as he looked at his daughter. He crossed the room in 3 long strides and hugged her, a protective, encompassing embrace. "You okay, V? You sounded shook up." "I'm fine," she said, pulling back. "Just tired of being quiet." "Good," Harrison said. He turned to the table. The softness vanished from his face, replaced by a look of granite. "So, which one of you is Montgomery?" Alistair scrambled to his feet, buttoning his jacket with trembling fingers. "Mr. Caldwell, an honor. Truly. I'm Alistair Montgomery, senior partner here at Kensington. This is all a huge misunderstanding. A family squabble, really." He extended his hand. Harrison looked at the hand, then looked at Alistair's face. He didn't move. He left Alistair's hand hanging in the air for 5 agonizing seconds until Alistair slowly, shamefully, retracted it. "A family squabble," Harrison repeated, his voice a low rumble. "Funny. I don't recall adopting a middle-aged lawyer with a bad comb-over. My family is standing right here." He gestured to Verity. "And you just fired her." "It was a lapse in judgment," Alistair stammered. "I have already rescinded the termination. Verity is welcome to stay. In fact, we were just discussing a promotion." "I don't think so," Verity said coolly. "I don't want to work for a man who ignores legal facts because of his ego." Harrison walked over to the head of the table, Alistair's spot. Alistair shuffled out of the way, ceding his seat of power without a fight. Harrison sat down, leaned back, and put his boots up on the empty chair next to him. "Here is the situation, Alistair," Harrison said, addressing the room as if he were holding court. "I own the Obsidian Tower. I hand-picked the tenants because I wanted a certain caliber of professionalism in my building. I leased the 42nd floor to Kensington Partners because I thought you were a top-tier firm." He paused, looking at the terrified Beatrice and the confused investors. "But today, I find out that the senior partner is in the habit of verbally abusing my daughter. And worse," Harrison's eyes narrowed, "I hear you were trying to bully a community centre and a pro bono lawyer." Harrison looked at Mr. Henderson, the tired lawyer from the community centre. "You're Henderson?" "Yes, sir," Mr. Henderson squeaked. "I like your centre," Harrison said. "My mother used to volunteer there back in the 50s. It's a good place." Alistair went pale. "Mr. Caldwell, strictly business. The centre is an impediment to progress." "Silence," Harrison snapped. The command cracked like a whip. I didn't ask you to speak. I'm speaking to my tenant. Now, Alistair, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't the Kensington Partners lease up for renewal in... He pretended to check an invisible watch. 3 months. Yes, sir, Alistair whispered. We were drafting the renewal proposal. Don't bother, Harrison said casually. I'm not renewing it. Alistair looked like he was having a stroke. Mr. Caldwell, you can't be serious. We have 300 employees. The infrastructure, the server rooms. Moving would cost us millions. It would bankrupt the firm's quarterly earnings. The reputation damage alone. Should have thought of that before you snapped your fingers at a Caldwell, Harrison said with a shrug. I don't rent to bullies. You have 90 days to vacate. I hear there is some nice office space available in the industrial district, next to the sewage treatment plant. Might be more your speed. The room erupted. The Zurich investors stood up, shouting in German. Beatrice was crying. Wait! Verity spoke up. Everyone froze. Harrison looked at his daughter. What is it, V? You want me to evict them faster? I can pull the fire alarm right now. No, Verity said, walking to the table. She picked up the file she had tried to show Alistair earlier. I want to show them exactly how incompetent Alistair is. Evicting them is easy, Dad. Proving I was right? That's better. She turned to the Zurich investors. Gentlemen, before you leave, you need to see this. My father's power might be evicting the firm, but Alistair's stupidity was about to lose you $10 million. The atmosphere in the room shifted from personal drama to professional execution. Verity Caldwell was no longer the intern. She was the prosecutor, and Alistair Montgomery was the defendant on the stand. Herr Müller, Verity addressed the lead Zurich investor, switching to flawless German. She had spent a year in Berlin during her undergrad, another fact Alistair hadn't bothered to learn. Would you please look at this document? The investor, a stern man with wire-rimmed glasses, looked surprised but took the file. Switch to English, please, Alistair demanded, trying to regain some control. We conduct business in English here. I am speaking the language of your clients, Alistair, Verity said, without looking at him. Something you might want to learn if you want to keep them. She switched back to English for the benefit of the room. The document Mr. Müller is holding is the original land deed for the community center property, dated 1922. Mr. Müller adjusted his glasses, reading the highlighted text. His eyebrows shot up. As I tried to tell Mr. Montgomery before he fired me, Verity continued, her voice clear and authoritative. Section 4. Paragraph B constitutes a grandfather preservation clause. It explicitly forbids the use of the land for commercial biochemical endeavors. The language is archaic, but legally it is ironclad. This is true, Mr. Müller asked, looking at Alistair with narrowed eyes. It's a nuisance clause, Alistair shouted, waving his hand dismissively. We would have crushed it in court. It's unenforceable. Is it? Harrison Caldwell chimed in. He was leaning forward now, looking at the document over Mr. Muller's shoulder. I know a thing or two about real estate law, gentlemen. I've developed half this city. A restrictive covenant from the 1920s regarding land usage? That's not a nuisance. That's a landmine. Harrison looked at Alistair with a predatory grin. If Uthelgard Bio bought that land and broke ground, the heirs of the original donor would have sued. And they would have won. The land would revert to the estate, and Ethelgard would be left with a hole in the ground and a $20 million legal fee. And who would they sue for malpractice? Kensington Partners. Mr. Müller slammed the file shut. The sound was like a gunshot in the room. You told us the due diligence was complete, Müller said to Alistair, his accent thick with anger. "You told us this was a clean acquisition. You were going to let us walk into a trap because you were too arrogant to listen to your own staff." I relied on the junior team to—" Alistair tried to deflect. "No," Verity cut in. "You didn't rely on us. You silenced us. I did the work. I found the clause. I brought it to you. And you threw me out because I didn't bring you coffee fast enough." Mr. Muller stood up. He buttoned his suit jacket. "Ethelgard Bio will not be proceeding with this acquisition through Kensington Partners. We will be reviewing our entire relationship with this firm." He turned to Verity and gave a short, respectful bow. "Thank you, Miss Caldwell. You have saved us a great deal of money and embarrassment. You are a sharp lawyer." "I'm just an intern," Verity said with a faint smile. "Not anymore, I suspect," Muller said. He signaled to his colleagues. They collected their briefcases and walked out without even looking at Alistair. The door clicked shut, leaving a heavy silence in their wake. Alistair sank into his chair, defeated. His face was grey. He looked at Beatrice, but she had physically moved her chair away from him, distancing herself from the blast radius. "Well," Harrison said, breaking the silence. "That was entertaining, watching you lose a client in real time. I usually have to pay for seats this good." "You've ruined me," Alistair whispered, staring at the table. 30 years of building this firm." "You ruined yourself," Harrison said, standing up. "My daughter just tried to save your hide, even after you treated her like dirt. If you had just listened to her, you'd still have a client. You might even still have a lease, but now—" "You have nothing." Harrison walked over to the window, looking out at the skyline. "Here is what is going to happen, Alistair. Because unlike you, I'm a businessman, not a monster." Alistair looked up, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. "I won't kick the firm out in 90 days, Harrison said. Alistair exhaled, his shoulders sagging with relief. "Thank you, Mr. Caldwell. Thank you. I promise we will—" "I'm not finished," Harrison interrupted. "I won't kick the firm out, because there are 300 employees here who didn't insult my daughter. Secretaries, paralegals, janitors. They shouldn't lose their jobs because their boss is an idiot." Harrison turned around. "The lease stays. Kensington Partners stays. But you go." "Excuse me?" Alistair blinked. "I want your resignation," Harrison said calmly. "Effective immediately. You step down as senior partner. You leave the building, and you don't come back. If you do that, I'll sign a 5-year lease extension with the remaining partners at the current rate. If you refuse, I evict everyone, and I tell the entire city exactly why 300 people lost their jobs." It was the ultimate checkmate. Harrison was using Alistair's own firm against him. "You can't force me out of my own firm," Alistair sputtered. "Watch me," Harrison said. "Beatrice?" Beatrice jumped. "Yes, Mr. Caldwell?" "Call the other managing partners. Get them in here. Tell them we are having an emergency vote regarding the leadership of the firm. Tell them the landlord is making it a condition of the lease." Beatrice didn't hesitate. She didn't look at Alistair. She picked up the phone. "Yes, sir." "Right away." "Beatrice," Alistair gasped. "Traitor." "It's business, Alistair," she said coldly, echoing the words he had said to so many people over the years. "I have a mortgage to pay. I'm not losing my job for you." Verity watched this with a strange sense of detachment. It was brutal, yes. But it was justice. Alistair had built a culture of fear and betrayal, and now it was consuming him. She felt a hand on her shoulder. It was Mr. Henderson. "Miss Caldwell?" he said softly. I don't know what to say. You saved the center." "The deed saved the center," Verity said. "I just read it." "No," he shook his head. "You stood up. That's what matters." He paused, looking at the chaos of the partners rushing into the room. "So, what will you do now? You're obviously too overqualified for this place." Verity looked at her father, who was commanding the room, and then at Alistair, who was shrinking into irrelevance. "I don't know," she admitted, "but I think I'm done fetching coffee." "Good," Harrison said, overhearing her. He walked over, putting an arm around her. "Because I have a proposition for you, and it's not working for Caldwell Holdings." Verity looked at him, surprised. "It's not?" "No," Harrison smiled, a genuine, proud smile. "I saw you in action today. You don't need my protection, V. You need your own arena, and I think I know exactly where that should be." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card. It wasn't his. It was a card for a small, boutique firm, uptown, one known for taking on impossible cases and fighting for the underdog. "The managing partner there is an old friend," Harrison said. "He hates bullies as much as we do. I think you'd fit right in." Verity took the card. She looked back at the table where Alistair was currently being shouted at by 3 other partners who had just arrived. He was finished. "Let's go, Dad," Verity said. "I have some things to pack." "Leave them," Harrison said, guiding her toward the door. "I'll have someone send them over. Let's go get lunch. I know a place that serves terrible coffee, but great burgers." As they walked out of the conference room, Verity didn't look back. She heard Alistair's voice rising in a panic, drowning in the consequences of his own arrogance. It was the sweetest sound she had ever heard. But the story wasn't quite over. Alistair was down, but men like him didn't stay down without trying to drag someone else into the mud with them. And Verity was about to learn that humiliation breeds a dangerous kind of desperation. 6 months had passed since the massacre in the Obsidian Tower. In the legal circles of the city, the story of Alistair Montgomery's fall had become a cautionary legend, whispered over martinis at the Lawyers' Club. He had been stripped of his partnership, blacklisted by the major firms, and essentially exiled from the high society he so desperately craved. Verity Caldwell, meanwhile, had found her footing. She was now a junior associate at O'Connell and Associates, a boutique litigation firm that operated out of a converted brownstone in the historic district. It was the polar opposite of Kensington Partners. The floors creaked, the coffee machine was a simple drip pot that always smelled slightly burnt, and the clients were people, not corporations. Liam O'Connell, the founding partner, was a disheveled genius who wore tweed jackets and quoted poetry during closing arguments. He treated Verity not as an heiress or an intern, but as a weapon. "You have a mind for the details, Verity," Liam had told her after they won a difficult tenancy case. "Most lawyers look at the law like a hammer. You look at it like a lockpick. That's rare." Life was good. Verity was finally being recognized for her work, not her father's bank account. She hadn't spoken to Alistair since that day in the conference room, and she assumed he had moved to Florida to play golf and nurse his wounded pride. She was wrong. Alistair hadn't gone to Florida. He had gone underground. It started with small things. Files on Verity's computer would go missing, only to reappear in the trash folder. Emails she had drafted to clients would bounce back with strange error messages. She chalked it up to the firm's outdated server. Then, the glitches turned malicious. Verity was representing a young woman named Emily Tate, a whistleblower who had exposed safety violations at a massive trucking company, Vanguard Logistics. It was a high-stakes case. Vanguard was playing dirty, trying to bury Emily in paperwork and intimidation tactics. 2 days before the preliminary injunction hearing, Verity received a call from the State Bar Association. "Ms. Caldwell," the voice on the other end was stern. "This is the Office of Disciplinary Counsel. We have received a formal complaint regarding your conduct in the Tate versus Vanguard matter. Verity froze, her hand tightening on the phone. A complaint? From whom? From an anonymous source, but the evidence attached is concerning. It appears to be a transcript of a privileged conversation between you and your client, Ms. Tate, where you allegedly advised her to destroy evidence. Verity felt the blood drain from her face. That's a lie. I never said that. I would never say that. We have an audio recording, Ms. Caldwell. We are opening an investigation. Until it is concluded, your license is under probationary review. If this is true, you're looking at disbarment. Verity hung up, her heart hammering against her ribs. She hadn't advised Emily to destroy anything. She was meticulous about ethics. She rushed into Liam's office. Liam, someone is setting me up. Liam looked up from a stack of depositions. He listened as Verity explained the call. His face grew dark. A recording? Did you meet Emily anywhere public? We met at a coffee shop last week, the Roasted Bean on 4th Street. Someone was listening, Liam said, standing up and pacing the small office. Vanguard is aggressive, but fabricating audio evidence? That's high risk even for them. This feels personal. That evening, Verity went back to her apartment. She felt paranoid, watching the shadows on the street. When she opened her laptop to check her email, a new message popped up. It was from an unrecognizable encrypted address. The subject line read, "How does it feel to be the one evicted?" Verity clicked it open. There was no text, just a photo. It was a grainy, long-distance shot of Verity walking into the Roasted Bean coffee shop. And in the foreground, sitting in a parked car with the window rolled down just an inch, was a man. He was wearing sunglasses and a baseball cap, but the sneer was unmistakable. The set of the jaw, the tilt of the head. Alistair Montgomery. He wasn't golfing. He was working as a legal consultant, a fixer for companies like Vanguard who needed to make problems disappear. And his price for helping Vanguard wasn't just money. It was Verity's head on a platter. Verity slammed the laptop shut. He was stalking her. He had likely doctored the audio recording using AI or spliced together, out-of-context sentences. He wanted to destroy her reputation, the way she had destroyed his. He wanted her disbarred, disgraced, and running back to her daddy in tears. She picked up her phone to call her father. Harrison could fix this. He could hire private investigators, crush Alistair with lawsuits, bury him. Her finger hovered over the dad contact. No, she thought. That's what Alistair thinks I am. A daddy's girl. If I call him now, Alistair wins. He proves that I can't fight my own battles. She put the phone down. She wasn't going to call Harrison. She was going to fight fire with fire. The next morning, Verity walked into the office with a grim determination. Liam, I know who it is. It's Alistair Montgomery. He's working as a shadow consultant for Vanguard. Liam whistled low. The guy you got fired? That's a dangerous man, Verity. A lawyer with nothing to lose is the worst kind of enemy. He sent me a photo, Verity said. He wants me to know it's him. He's gloating, which means he's sloppy. What do you want to do? Liam asked. We can go to the police. The police won't do anything about a vague email and a photo, Verity said, and the Bar Association investigation will take months to clear my name. By then, Emily's case will be dead. We need to catch him in the act. We need to lure him out. How? Verity smiled, a cold, sharp expression that looked very much like her father. Alistair thinks I'm a spoiled heiress who got lucky once. He thinks I'm fragile. So let's give him what he wants. Let's show him a breakdown. The plan was risky. It required Verity to play the victim, to publicly unravel. She started by missing deadlines. She let her appearance slip. She staged an argument with Liam in the courthouse lobby, where she shouted and cried, ensuring that Vanguard's junior lawyers saw it. She knew they would report back to Alistair. The Caldwell girl is cracking. The pressure is too much. It worked. 3 days later, Verity received a settlement offer from Vanguard. They requested a meeting at a private location, a hotel suite downtown, to discuss dropping the ethics complaint in exchange for settling the Emily Tate case for pennies. It was extortion. It was illegal. And it was exactly the trap Verity needed. "I'm going alone," Verity told Liam as she fixed a wire under her blouse. "It's dangerous," Liam warned. "If Alistair is there, he might be unstable." "He's a coward, Liam," Verity said, checking the audio levels on her recording device. "Bullies are always cowards when you corner them. I'll have the police on standby outside, but I need to get him to admit he fabricated the evidence." Verity walked out of the office and hailed a cab. The destination was the Hotel Meridian. Room 304. As she rode through the city, she looked at the obsidian tower in the distance. Her father owned the building, but today she was building something of her own. She was building a reputation as a woman who didn't just survive sharks, she hunted them. Room 304 of the Hotel Meridian was opulent, smelling of lavender and stale cigarette smoke. When Verity entered, she found 2 lawyers from Vanguard Logistics sitting on a plush velvet sofa. They were young, slick, and looked nervous. But the man standing by the window, looking out at the city with a glass of scotch in his hand, was the one who sucked the oxygen out of the room. Alistair Montgomery turned around. He looked older than Verity remembered. His hair was thinning, his face gaunt, and his suit, while still expensive, looked a size too big, as if he had lost weight from stress. But his eyes were feverishly bright. "Verity," Alistair purred, taking a sip of his drink. "So kind of you to join us. I hear you've been having a rough week. Trouble with the Bar Association?" Verity stood by the door, clutching her purse to her chest, feigning the nervousness she knew he expected. "You did this," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You faked that tape." Alistair chuckled, a dry, rattling sound. "Allegedly. But let's not get bogged down in details. The reality, my dear, is that your career is currently circling the drain. Disbarment is such an ugly word. It sticks to you. Even your father's money can't scrub that stain off." He walked closer, invading her personal space. Verity forced herself not to step back. "What do you want, Alistair?" she asked. "I want balance," Alistair hissed, his veneer of politeness slipping. "You took everything from me. My partnership, my reputation, my life. I had to sell my house, Verity. Do you know what that feels like? To be humiliated by a girl who used to fetch my coffee." "I didn't humiliate you," Verity said calmly. "The truth did. The truth is, whatever the person with the most power says it is," Alistair shouted, spit flying from his lips. He composed himself, adjusting his cuffs. "And right now, I have the power, I have the recording, I have the witnesses ready to testify that you are incompetent and unethical." "So, this is blackmail," Verity said, making sure her voice was clear for the wire taped to her chest. "You want me to throw Emily Tate's case?" "I want you to convince your client to accept a settlement of $50,000. And then, I want you to resign from O'Connell and Associates and publicly apologize to me for the misunderstanding at Kensington. You will write a letter stating that you lied about the deed, that you were confused." "But I wasn't confused," Verity said. "The deed was real." "It doesn't matter," Alistair snapped. "History is written by the victors. If you do this, the Bar complaint disappears. The recording vanishes. If you don't, well, I hope you enjoy real estate, because you'll never practice law again." Verity looked at the vanguard lawyers. "And you two? You're okay with this? This is extortion." The lawyers looked at their shoes. They were pawns, terrified of Alistair. Verity took a deep breath. She had what she needed. He had admitted to controlling the complaint and the recording. But she wanted one more thing. She wanted him to feel the fear he had inflicted on her. She dropped the act. She straightened her spine, her trembling ceased, and her expression shifted from fear to a cold, hard amusement. "You know, Alistair," Verity said, her voice dropping to a conversational, confident tone. "You made the same mistake twice." Alistair frowned, confused by the sudden change in her demeanor. "What?" "You underestimated me. Again." Verity walked over to the table and poured herself a glass of water, ignoring Alistair's stunned look. "You thought I was falling apart this week. You thought the crying in the lobby, the missed deadlines. You thought that was real." "It was real," Alistair sneered. "I saw the reports." "You saw a performance," Verity corrected. "I needed to get you in a room. I needed you to say, explicitly, that you are blackmailing me to settle a federal case. Because while fabricating evidence is bad, extortion, witness tampering, that's a felony, Alistair. That's prison time." Alistair laughed, but his eyes darted to the door. "You're bluffing. It's your word against ours. These two gentlemen will testify that you came here to beg." "Actually," Verity said, unbuttoning the top of her blouse to reveal the small, black microphone taped to her sternum, "the jury will hear it from you directly, and they're listening right now." Alistair's face went white. He lunged for her. "Give me that!" The door to the hotel suite burst open. It wasn't Harrison Caldwell this time. It wasn't private security. It was the police. 4 uniformed officers and 2 detectives in plain clothes stormed the room, guns drawn. "Police! Step away from her!" one detective shouted. Alistair froze, his hands in the air. He looked at Verity with pure hatred, but also with a dawning realization of total defeat. "Alistair Montgomery," the detective said, pulling out handcuffs. "You are under arrest for extortion, blackmail, and witness tampering. We also have a warrant to search your electronics for the fabrication of evidence." As the officers cuffed him, Alistair started screaming. "She planned this. She's a witch. She set me up." Verity watched calmly as they dragged him out. As he passed her, she leaned in. "I didn't set you up, Alistair," she whispered. "I just let you be yourself." The vanguard lawyers were also detained for questioning. The room cleared out, leaving Verity alone with the detective. "Good work, Miss Caldwell," the detective said. "Your father called the captain, made sure we were here on time. But you held your own in there. That guy is dangerous." "My father called?" Verity asked. "Yeah, about 10 minutes ago. Said he was watching the GPS on your phone, and if we weren't through that door in 30 seconds, he was going to buy the hotel and fire everyone." The detective chuckled. "He's a protective guy." Verity smiled. She walked out of the hotel room, the adrenaline fading, replaced by a deep exhaustion. She pulled out her phone. "Hi, Dad," she said, when he picked up on the first ring. "Is he in cuffs?" Harrison asked immediately. "He is." "Good, I'm outside in the car. Liam is with me. We're going for dinner, and you are ordering the most expensive thing on the menu." Verity walked out of the hotel lobby and saw the familiar black town car. Harrison rolled down the window, grinning. Beside him, Liam O'Connell gave her a thumbs up. Verity got in. She had faced down her demon. She had cleared her name. But the story wasn't just about winning. It was about what came next. The fall of Alistair Montgomery triggered a domino effect. The investigation into his files revealed corruption that went far beyond one case. It exposed judges, other lawyers, and corporate bribes. Verity Caldwell had inadvertently pulled the thread that unraveled a massive legal conspiracy in the city, and as the dust settled, Verity realized that her life as the invisible intern was gone forever. She was now a public figure, known as the billionaire's daughter who cleaned house. But fame brings its own problems, and while Alistair was gone, the enemies he had worked for, powerful corporations like Vanguard, were not happy about being exposed by a 24-year-old. The final chapter of her story would not be a legal battle. It would be a choice between returning to the safety of her father's world or stepping fully into the line of fire to become the champion the city needed. 1 year later, the skyline of the city hadn't changed much, but the name on the brass plaque outside the brownstone in the historic district had. It now read, O'Connell and Caldwell, Attorneys at Law. Verity stood outside the building, watching a painter finish touching up the gold lettering. She wasn't holding a tray of coffee for an arrogant boss. She was holding a briefcase containing the closing documents for the community centre's permanent trust. After Alistair's arrest, the legal landscape of the city had shifted. Kensington Partners had undergone a massive restructuring, desperate to distance themselves from the scandal. Alistair was currently serving a 5-year sentence for extortion and fraud, his career reduced to a cautionary tale taught in law school ethics classes. But Verity didn't dwell on the past. She had too much work to do. "Looks good," a voice boomed behind her. Verity turned to see Harrison Caldwell stepping out of his car. He looked at the sign, then at his daughter. "I have to admit, seeing Caldwell on a building I don't own takes some getting used to." "You'll get over it," Verity teased, hugging him. "Did you bring the check?" "Always all business," Harrison laughed, pulling an envelope from his jacket. "Here, the donation for the center's new roof. Anonymous, as requested." "Thank you, Dad." "I'm proud of you, V," Harrison said, his voice serious. "You know, I could have bought you a firm. I could have bought you 10 firms. But you built this. That client list, that reputation. That's all you." Verity looked at the sign again. She thought back to that day in the elevator, hiding in the back, terrified of being seen. She thought about Alistair snapping his fingers in her face. It felt like a lifetime ago. She wasn't the invisible girl anymore. She was the woman who had taken down a giant with nothing but a property deed and a backbone. "I learned from the best," Verity said. "Come on, Liam is popping champagne, and don't worry, the coffee here is still terrible." Harrison chuckled and followed his daughter inside. The door closed behind them, not with a slam, but with the solid, reassuring click of a foundation that was built to last. And that is the story of how Verity Caldwell went from the invisible intern to the woman who brought down the city's most arrogant lawyer. It's a powerful reminder that you should never judge someone by their title or their cheap suit. Alistair Montgomery thought he was untouchable because he had the corner office, but he forgot the golden rule of business. Check the lease, and never, ever underestimate the person who brings you your coffee. They might just own the building you're standing in. What do you think? Did Alistair deserve his fate, or was the humiliation too much? And have you ever been underestimated by a boss who didn't know your true worth? Let me know your stories in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of karmic justice and family power, please hit that like button, share this video with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a story. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.